Moses is the author of the Pentateuch. Moses, is he the author of the Pentateuch? Always take a deep breath before you talk. You run out of breath, you run out of speech. Introduction. We read this already. Most of the so-called theologians, liberal theologians and commentators, along with not a few conservatives, have followed the theory that a number of unknown writers and editors contributed and have all their weird theories like the JEDP hypothesis, and there's no proof. They make up stuff like Jehovahist, whatever the word Jehovah is translated in English in the Bible. That's one particular author. And the Elohimist, Elihish document, and then D for Deuteronomist, because he's had a little different style, and P, priests, the priestly documents. And they talk about the characterization of a particular book, or in this case 5 books, and they say, well, it's a different author because it's a different subject. Well, the different subject is because it's a different book. Come on. Anyway, evidence. Evidence. Archaeology has recently provided us with 2 powerful supports for the early dating of the priestly writings. Kitchen describes the first find. Certain difficult expressions and passages in Leviticus could be solved only with cuneiform data of the 18th century to 15th centuries BC. And these were archaic and obscure by the post-exilic period. K.A. Kitchen, in his book, the Ras Shamra tablets, 1400 BC, which contain a large amount of Ugaritic literature, render the Wellhausen post-exilic concept void. Many of the technical sacrificial terms of Leviticus were discovered in far-removed Canaanite-speaking Ugarit, 1400 BC, such as Ishesh, offering made by fire, and Kelid, whole burnt offering, and Shalaman, peace offering, and Asham, guilt offering. Archer is correct in concluding that these terms were already current in Palestine at the time of Moses and the conquest, so he didn't have to make these things up, and that the whole line of reasoning which made out the terminology of the Levitical cultists to be late is devoid of foundation. So you find some discoveries. And K.A. Kitchen is one of the best Egyptologists around, and he's got far more writings than most, and is completely trustworthy in most of what he says. And the internal evidence now. So that's the entry into this subject. Internal evidence is witness to the Pentateuch. Josh McDowell states in Evidence That Demands a Verdict, another great book that's summarized for the layman like myself, some of this information that I can go dig into. The Pentateuch itself clearly states that these portions of its contents were written by Moses, the Book of the Covenant, Exodus 24:4 and 7. And Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord. And then he rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he took the Book of the Covenant and read it in the hearing of the people. This is the Book of the Covenant. And he said he wrote it. And they said, and all that the Lord has spoken we will do, and we will be obedient. So let's take this at face value and see if there's any evidence against it. Don't look for imaginary ideas about the quality or the context of a particular book. Some books have you read a romance, the context is romantic. You read a legal book, the context is legal. Renewal of the covenant, Exodus 34:27, referring to Exodus 34:10-26. Then the Lord said to Moses, write down these words, for in accordance with these words I have made a covenant with you and with Israel. So, face value, let's take it until proved otherwise. Deuteronomic Code. The Deuteronomic Code comprises the bulk of Deuteronomy 5-30. 31:9. So Moses wrote this law and gave it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and to all the elders of Israel. Now, we have years and years, hundreds and hundreds of years of transmission of this text from the ancient Hebrew all the way up through the Masoretics of the 9th, 10th century and thereafter. And they haven't taken this verse out of there or questioned it. Deuteronomy 31:24-26. And it came about when Moses finished writing the words of this law in a book until they were complete. Then Moses commanded the Levites who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord, saying, take this book of the law and place it beside the ark of the covenant of the Lord. Nothing's been coming along since history saying, oh, that doesn't belong in the original text. And who wrote it? Well, it says Moses. And God's judgment of Amalek, Exodus 17:14. Then the Lord said to Moses, write this in a book as a memorial and recite it to Joshua, that it will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Another, support, corroboration, Moses is the author. Anybody else mentioned? No. Itinerary of Israelites from Ramses to Moab. Numbers 33:2. Okay, we have the book of Numbers. And Moses recorded their starting places according to their journeys by the command of the Lord. And these are the journeys according to their starting places. So if you have 3 or 4 or 5 authors, how come they all agree that Moses was the author? Yeah, the Song of Songs, Song of Moses in Deuteronomy 32. Now therefore write this song for yourselves and teach it to the sons of Israel. Put it on the lips in order that this song may be a witness for me against the sons of Israel. For when I bring them into the land flowing with milk and honey, which I swore to their fathers, and they have eaten, and are satisfied and become prosperous, then they will turn to other gods, and serve them, and spurn me, and break my covenant. Then it shall come about, when many evils and troubles have come upon them, that this song will testify before them as a witness. For it shall not be forgiven from the lips of their descendants. For I know their intent, which they are developing today, before I have brought them into the land which I swore. So you're inventing 4 or 5 different authors because of different styles. He's writing a song. Now he's a songwriter. It's the same guy, You can write a history, you can write laws, and you can write a song. It still could be the same person. The term having written signifies authorship and does not necessarily mean one has actually penned the words. When we speak of Moses as having written the Pentateuch or being its author, it should be noted that, as has previously been pointed out, that quite in accord with ancient Mesopotamian practice, this does not necessarily mean he himself wrote the actual words with his own hand, although such may have been the case. It is quite possible that the bulk of the Pentateuch was, like Hammurabi's law code, dictated to scribes who wrote it down. This in no way undermines the essential Mosaic authorship of the contents of the Pentateuch. The legal documents in these passages attribute their authorship to Moses in either the subscription or the subscription, superscription or subscription. Superscription often is the case in ancient writings. Exodus, we have these verses in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, testimony. Who is the author? Moses. Moses certainly was in a position to write the Pentateuch. He grew up in Pharaoh's house and was, as Stephen said, learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. All now agree that his learning would have included the knowledge of writing. Moses had the information necessary for the project. It is likely that records of pre-Mosaic history existed, and had they been in the possession of the Hebrews, they would have certainly become accessible to Moses, the champion of his people. Had they been kept in the Egyptian archives from Joseph's time, they would have likewise been available to Moses during his early adulthood. Moses also had the time to record this history. He spent 40 years in Egypt and 40 years in Midian, and there was plenty of time in both of these periods to author Genesis. Moses' qualification. That Moses was preeminently prepared to author a work such as the Pentateuch is witnessed by the following qualifications. Education, trained in the royal Egyptian court, highly developed academic disciplines. This is without a doubt included a knowledge of writing, for even the women's toilet articles of the time were inscribed. Tradition. He undoubtedly received the Hebrew traditions of their early history and encounters with God. Geographical familiarity. Moses possessed an intimate knowledge of the climate and geography of Egypt and Sinai as displayed in the Pentateuch. And motivation. Motivation is the founder of the Commonwealth of Israel. He had more than adequate incentive to provide the nation with concrete moral and religious foundations. Time, 40 years, long years of wandering in the Sinai wilderness, easily allowed ample opportunity to write this work. Conclusion. At a time when educated slaves working at the Egyptian turquoise mines were inscribing their records on the tunnel walls, it is inconceivable that a man of Moses' background would fail to record the details of one of history's most significant epics. Kurt Seth, one of the greatest authorities of the century on ancient Egypt, in attempting to find the father of one of the greatest contributions to the literary progress of civilization, the North Semitic script mentions Moses as a possibility, as the author. There you go. Corroboration outside of the Bible. The witness of the other Old Testament books. Old Testament verses record that the Torah, or the law, was from Moses and not simply an oral tradition, but an actual written law of Moses. These Old Testament verses record that the Torah of the law was for Moses. Joshua 8:32 speaks of the law of Moses which he had written. There are all these passages. How much testimony do you want? Some people, more is not enough. Witness of the New Testament. The New Testament writers also held that the Torah of the law came from Moses. Verses which refer to Mosaic authorship of the law. Mark 12:19, first century, Moses wrote for us a law. And John 1:17, the law was given through Moses. Romans 10:5, for Moses writes that the man who practices the righteousness which is based on law shall live by that righteousness. Other passages which insist on this include all of these: Luke, John, Acts, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Hebrews, and Revelation. And verses which record that Jesus believed the Torah to be from Moses, the Son of God. You believe in the Son of God, believe in his testimony in Mark, Luke, John 7, and John 5. Especially in John 5:45-47, Jesus states unequivocally his belief that Moses wrote the Torah. Do not think that I will accuse you before the Father. The one who accuses you is Moses, in whom you have set your hope. For if you believed Moses, you would also believe me, for he wrote of me. But if you do not believe in his writings, how will you believe my words? Conclusion. Eisfeld states, the name used in the New Testament clearly with reference to the whole Pentateuch, the Book of Moses, is certainly to be understood as meaning that Moses was the compiler of the Pentateuch. We have external evidence as well. Jewish tradition. Pfeiffer says, there is no reason to doubt that the Pentateuch was considered the divine revelation to Moses when it was canonized about 400 B.C. Ecclesiastes, one of the books of the Apocrypha, which was written about 180, Ecclesiasticus, one of the books of the Apocrypha, about 180 B.C., gives the witness to Moses' authorship. 24:23, Ecclesiasticus. All this is the covenant book of God Most High, the law which Moses enacted to be the heritage of the assemblies of Jacob. The Talmud and the Mishnah attribute the Torah to Moses. The Talmud, a Jewish commentary on the law, dated from about 200 B.C., and the Mishnah, a rabbinic interpretation and legislation dating from about 100 B.C., both attribute the Torah to Moses. Philo held to Mosaic authorship. Likewise, Philo, the Jewish philosopher and theologian born approximately 2080, held Mosaic authorship. But I will tell the story of Moses as I have learned it. Birth from the sacred books, the wonderful monuments of his wisdom, which he has left behind, and from some of the elders of the nation. Flavius Josephus testifies to Mosaic authorship. The 1st century A.D. Jewish historian Flavius Josephus says in his Josephus against Appian, for we have not an innumerable multitude of books among us, disagreeing from and contradicting one another, as the Greeks have, but only 22 books, our present 39, which are justly believed to be divine, and of them 5 belong to Moses, which contains his laws and the traditions of the origin of mankind till his death. Early Christian tradition. Junilius, an imperial official of the court of Justinian I, Byzantine emperor from 527-565 AD, held to the Mosaic authorship of the Pentateuch, as can be seen from this dialogue between himself and one of his disciples, recorded in this particular Latin book, concerning the writers of the divine books. The disciple, how do you know who are the writers of the divine books? Master, in 3 ways, either from the titles and prefaces, or from the titles alone, or from the tradition of the ancients, as Moses is believed to have written the first 5 books of the history, all 3. Although the title does not say so, nor does he himself write, the Lord spake to me, but as of another, the Lord spake unto Moses. That's done in the third party. Leontius of Byzantium, 6th century. And he, in his treatise, as for these 5 books, all bear witness that they are the work of Moses. And we have other Christian church fathers as well. Melito, Cyril of Jerusalem, Hilary, Rufinus, Augustine. Nothing around here that's so contradictory or even questioning that Moses is the author, yet the modern liberals of a century ago claim that there are 4 or 5